we have to realize that it often starts in the body. Our body's telling us these things. Anxiety tells us when we need to start paying attention. That's what it is. It's the kid in the classroom who's the little bully that is just saying, actually, I need support. But instead, they get sent to the principal's office all the time.
Welcome to the Advanced Women's Health Podcast, where we empower women with the latest insights and advice on holistic health. From cutting-edge medical research to practical wellness tips, our mission is to help you thrive at every stage of life. Join us as we explore topics ranging from hormonal balance and reproductive health to nutrition and mental well-being. Whether you're seeking solutions for a specific health concern or simply want to enhance your overall wellness, you're in the right place. Let's embark on this journey to better health together. This is the Advanced Women's Health Podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Advanced Women's Health Podcast. I am so excited to be here with Connie today. Connie supports so many of our patients with this high-performing anxiety topic that we are about to dive into throughout Ontario and BC and in person in Vancouver. And I will get her to introduce herself here in a second. But first and foremost, this podcast is for you if September 1st is not only your new year, but your anxiety peak, right? There's so many patients in my office right now that are both excited for and dreading that back to school energy, whether you have children or not, that shift in routines, that back to the buzz, summer is gone, the chill vibes have ended, and you're just really struggling with high performance anxiety, as I call it, but just feeling like you're stuck in a loop. You can't get out of it. You've tried talk therapy and you really just don't know where to go. And that is something Connie and I have aligned on so much in our chats, is just how to be high performing, but also not run yourself into the ground, and how to access different parts of the therapeutic models to feel really good. So yeah, I would love for you to introduce yourself, Connie, and then let's just jam. Let's talk to all of these women listening, being like, this is me, I need help. What are we doing here?
Thanks, Sarah. Yep, that definitely was a very good definition of me in the past, is someone who used my, as you call it, high performance anxiety as like a superpower. And I think that a lot of us do, right? Especially when you're playing all these different roles in life. But until it becomes, like you said, where it's no longer a superpower and it turns into things that we are forced now to slow down. We either have burnout or we get ill. It's one thing to have it fuel us, and it's another thing to create the opposite end, is where we're forced to slow down.
Yeah.
And coming into the school season, very much so. You could already feel your heart racing just thinking about the schedules. I know I do.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
yeah. So as you mentioned, I am a therapist, but I didn't plan to be into this. This was basically a journey because I was somebody who finally was at my wit's end and knew I needed something. I didn't even know what at that point. I had gone to counseling in the past and didn't quite hit the mark, kind of thing. So, it wasn't something that I ever thought I needed again. I was, okay, well, I can figure this out myself. But it wasn't until that I hit a wall and
As every high performer ever, I can figure this out. I've got
totally, right? You read your self-help books, you listen to your self-help podcasts, and you go, I got it. Like, no big deal. And in the outside, you look like you do have it all together. People are like, oh, you're smiling. You could do this. You do your superpower. But I ended up hitting that wall. Was raising 3 kids. My husband had just lost his job, and I was diagnosed with cancer for a second time. And previously, I tried counseling, but it wasn't until that moment that it's like, I didn't like who I was becoming. I was this person who was starting to be more reactive, the racing thoughts, the feeling completely out of control, when I knew there was something missing in the journey. So I went to counseling, thought I could get the support I needed. And this sounds awful coming from a therapist, but I didn't get what I needed.
Yeah.
So, not knocking counseling, but what it was is I think everybody arrives at their spot in a different place. And sometimes it's not being able to find somebody who has the same fit as you or what you need, right? I knew at those moments I didn't want someone to fix me, but I needed
Mhm.
someone to give me tools. I needed to understand why I was being the way I was being. I thought there was something wrong with me. I'm losing my mind, basically. And in reality, I needed a counselor who was more like myself. I wanted tools to go, this is some things I could be doing in my daily life, but this is also why I am like I am. And a lot of
Yeah.
it stemmed was dysregulated nervous system, as you know, is the root of it all too. And so it led me to a whole level of that's it. I'm going back to school. I'm going to be the counselor I need to be for me. And through
Mhm.
that process, I had learned a lot. I now support people who are high achievers as well, but have been probably carrying anxiety for
Yeah.
most of their lives without even realizing it. So that was my passion is
Yeah.
I'm not
Absolutely.
here to fix you. I'm not here to change you, but I'm here to go, there's an education component to this of why we're built, how we're built. And this is why I love what you're supporting because it is more about than just, hey, we're going to support your gut health. We're going to tell you with education and then adding in other tools so that you can empower yourself to then
Yeah.
continue the path forward. And I think that's what I was missing was the empowered part as well.
Yeah. And I think you said something there that's going to have a lot of people raising their hands.
Ooh,
And I'm speaking as someone who's had 2 decades of therapy, right? Probably more than that at this point in my life. You sometimes do need to do something, right? There's
yeah.
something to do. And you're like, I just needed a tool. I needed a something. And I deal with so many patients that go to see a therapist and they're like, that's your problem. Is you want to do this. You want to do a tool. You want to do something. You just need to sit here and talk to me and we'll talk through it and find patterns. And not to knock any therapy. I think every therapy is well placed for the right person at the right time. I totally agree. But I deeply align with what you're saying. Doer's going to do. I'm a doer. I'm just going to do. So if you don't give me a tool, I'm going to look somewhere else for a tool. I can't just sit in your office and talk for an hour once a week and go home into my day-to-day life. Like that's just not going to compute. Just like I was joking with a patient of mine who's a therapist the other day. I was like, I could go into ChatGPT. I'd like put in the whole argument I just had with one, and I absolutely will be right. Everything is perfect. We move on, right? But like doers are always going to find a tool. And
Yes.
so what I love so much about you and your practice, and we'll get into this as we go as well, is that your toolbox is about regulation. Your toolbox is about connecting. Your toolbox is about how I describe it, like that conscious versus subconscious piece, is that every time you get to that regulated state, every time you get to that deep meditation, you can unlock a little bit more about the motivating forces without having to try, without having to think deeply. Like it just allows you to be in a receptive space to be able to process in a completely different way. So I know I'm jumping ahead, but I just want to honor what you said there about a tool, because for anyone who's been in that place in a therapist's office, in a counselor's office, and they are saying, but I want something to do. And you've been told you're wrong for wanting something to do.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's subtleties to it, but
Hmm.
I think it validates a lot of people because I
Yeah.
hear that all the time. Is like, you don't need something to do when you go home. We just need to talk this out. We need to find the pattern. And I think it's, it's so unique to the person, but I think there's through lines there that we can really support that person in a different way.
Yeah, I do too. And don't get me wrong, there is a lot of talk in therapy,
Yeah.
and it is about looking at people's patterns for sure and
Well, yeah.
supporting them where they're at. Some people might want just to come in and vent. for sure, or to check themselves
Yeah.
if that's the case.
Yeah.
However, even those people want to be able to go home and have something that they're like, what is my step forward? What am I
Yes.
doing in this moment that helps me move forward versus stay stuck in my old stories?
Preach.
Right. And even though, as yes, you're a big story believer, I hear you, right? We all create them. That's what our brain's going to do.
Yeah.
That is the purpose of our brain. It wants to solve things, right?
Mhm.
And so we give it things to solve by going, what ifs? What if this? What if that? But it can
Yeah.
also keep us stuck in those loops and those anxiety circles and get even more overwhelmed if we're not conscious of it, right? So even
Let
something as small as that.
Yeah, let's stick there. Our brains are absolutely a meaning making machines.
Hmm.
You see the look on my face, there's a meaning. I see the look on your face, there's a meaning. You see a text message, there's a meaning.
Yeah,
Your blood sugar drops and you read an email, you connect meaning,
for
right?
sure.
Walk me through that a little bit more because I truly don't think people understand the significance of that comment. So, what do you mean by your brain is a meaning making machine? Let's just go a little deeper on.
Okay, we have to remember that really 95% of our mind is actually subconscious. Everything we're doing is pretty much from a subconscious level. It is our values, our memories, our feelings, our emotions, all that, even responsible for our autonomic responses, right? The fight or flight, it's our primitive brain as well. So when we see something in our environment, it is creating a story for us, even. Our thoughts are creating a feeling in our body and vice versa, right? We can
Mhm.
feel our environment sometimes before we're even in our thought. But for the most part, a lot of it is based on past experiences. And those past experiences then take in the information as we sit here now, we've just read that email, say, and we've got a little flooded or we got some feelings happening inside us. Our brain's already trying to make a story from
Oh.
that, going, oh, what did that mean? Right? Oh, why am I feeling this way? When I read that, I'm triggered. But it's
Mhm.
trying to create a solution. So it's driving those experiences from the past and trying to put them together to create a solution that's in the future. It's not in the
Yes.
present moment naturally. So that's kind of our continual loop that we always go through. And if we know that's how our brain works, we can almost stop and go, hold on here.
Mhm.
Let's take a pause. Let me just help interrupt the story a little bit and look at what is right now. What are the facts, right? I know
Mhm.
that this is my brain trying to do a little bit of forecasting when in reality, no, that was in the past. I don't have to react this way in the same way, right? Maybe they weren't trying to do that. What are the facts of this? Say email if that's the case, right?
Yeah.
So we can interrupt our own stories. Does that
I think
answer the
that's
question?
absolutely answers the question.
Okay.
And I always use this example with patients where you ever feel your blood boil before a thought comes into your head? Do you ever have that like sink pit in your stomach feeling before something even happens, right? This happens so much. And we'll hear about it before your period. People will be like, I am so reactive. It feels like nothing happens. And I'm just immediately at, like, again, flooded with thoughts, feelings, that sensation. And I think it's so empowering to be able to put words to what's going on there because people will just say, oh, I'm so reactive. I'm so anxious. I'm such an angry person. Like they take that on as almost an identity when the
Hmm.
reality is something about that environment triggered a subconscious past, and we're going to get into that in a big way, past recollection that then
Yeah.
brought you to the stress response. So I can use myself as an example. And I've talked about this before on the podcast. This was many years ago, everyone. I'm good. But we had a home invasion.
Okay.
And one of the things that happened is I walked to my office in the morning. So we were very fortunate. I didn't see the people, but I walked to the office in the morning and I saw all my stuff was gone. And so what would happen is I would walk towards my office and get flooded. I didn't
Yeah.
see anything. I didn't feel anything. I just immediately was like reliving that experience. I'm not safe. I would
Yeah.
catch the same glimpse. My laptop wouldn't be on a stand where it normally is. And I would get flooded, like
Yeah.
completely dysregulated. It wasn't conscious.
No.
I knew in that moment I was safe.
Yeah.
I knew in that moment everything was good, but it's because of everything that was happening behind that I wasn't able to create this sense of calm. I had to do a lot of work to get myself there. And then with, again, the right therapy, I used EMDR and hypno. Those were like the two things I used. I realized it went from I'm like, okay, I can regulate myself to I'm fine. There's no trigger. There's no nothing. And I know that's like I'm someone who's done a lot of therapy. I'm not saying everyone's going to expect a no trigger environment, but because it was an acute incident and the story behind my safety, the
Yeah.
subconscious rhetoric around the fact that I wasn't safe, that was gone. I was then able to navigate through and not have to deal with the flood because I feel like for so many women, they spend all of their day trying to put their feet on the effing ground. They are so like they are it's not even necessarily the situations, it's just the environment, the
Yeah.
past history.
Yeah.
All of these things just hit them one after the other and they get overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And so I would love for anyone who just resonated with that, we're going to dive into it, but can you talk me through that subconscious piece and what's going on there?
Yeah, so that is a really good point you made is even though the stressor was gone,
Mhm.
really, I mean, okay, it sits in your body. And until you work on that nervous system and feeling safe, it's really hard to move forward. And that might be
Yep.
a matter of a couple different methods that you use. You mentioned hypnotherapy and EMDR and talk therapy. So there are various tools, but our body, this is what they called somatic therapy, is that we're actually holding so much in our nervous system, in our body. And like you said, it's subconscious because we've
Mhm.
made a connection now with something that has happened and our body's trying to keep us protected because that's what the subconscious wants to do. It wants to keep us safe. And sometimes that keeping us safe keeps us on alert. But
Mhm.
we don't need to be on alert all the time. So, this is where that subconscious work can really come into play. It can help us understand that we are more in control than we give ourselves credit for. We are not continually needing to be triggered. We can notice the trigger and have less reactivity to it, right? So, that's where the resilience part comes in. Like you said, some people, yeah, we might have a slight trigger. For me, my slate used to be walking into the cancer center, but
Yeah.
I now actually walk by there every day because that's where the Vancouver office is,
I was like, it's right
right?
next door. I was
It's
talking to
right
Jessica
next
Moore about
door.
that the other day. Yeah.
So I've learned that I can hold it differently, right? There's a somatic response that used to happen without me even thinking about it because that trauma was stored in my body, not just my brain. Right? So
Absolutely.
me working with both helped me through it. So now, yeah, I might go, oh, yeah. And then it's gone.
Mhm.
So being able to realize that our body and minds work together, it's not just one. And for years, therapy was just cognitive.
Yeah.
And it's evolved so much that now majority of the therapists work both in order to get you through a lot of that overwhelm we're holding. And it being in transition period, you were transitioning to being able to be okay back at home in your own
Yeah.
office again. That took some time.
Mhm.
And our environment, coming up to this transition of going back to school,
Yeah.
we immediately remember from last year how chaotic it was,
Yeah.
right? What are we doing right
Hard
away?
facts.
Right? As soon as I think about September starting,
Yeah.
it's like, okay, I got to brace myself. And my
Mhm.
body is probably already having triggered what the school year is going to be like.
Yeah.
Right? Even for some of the teachers I work with, we're already starting on what's going to be different. We can't change our environment necessarily. You're still going to have the kids coming into the school and but we've got to change how our body responds to that stress now. Very different. What's in our control,
Yeah.
for sure, right? And noticing the sensations inside. I like to call it the thermometer. We need to know ourselves well so that we cannot allow ourselves to go up to that 8 or 9 on the thermometer where we're heart is racing, but we've caught it much earlier at like a 3 and go, okay,
Yeah.
this is where I need some support for me. And then has some things that can do, right, to change how I feel. I'm probably
Yeah. I
jumping a
love it.
little bit everywhere.
No, I love it. I love it. It's such a key thing because I have always been someone who's just very high performing, very push, very do, very cognitive. And when I was in that period of time, I have endometriosis. It flared due to the stress, etc. But I also ended up in chronic pain. I couldn't even pick up my little kids at
Oh,
that point.
yeah.
And I was forced to connect my brain and my body. And it's funny, I was listening to an interview with Tara Swart, the neuroscientist, the other day.
Okay.
And she was talking about how there's an area of the brain that turns off when someone's had trauma. And so you can't, it's in the language center. So you can't actually articulate that trauma. You can't get it out through language. So you do have to get it out through subconscious processing, through connecting to the body, through those types of things. And I always say now, my back is my thermometer because if I feel
True.
it, that ever so slightly, I feel that response, I'm like, nope, you've pushed it, right? And so
Yeah.
I will only let myself get to a 3 or a 4 because I'm not willing to go back there. So it's almost become a gift, right? That the way my body holds stress has become a gift because it's allowed me to say no before we've had to move to those other points of burnout, exhaustion, where I'm losing my resilience, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think
Yeah.
it can definitely go both ways, but it's for anyone who feels like you struggle to articulate, but you're dealing with pain, you're dealing with exhaustion, you're dealing with physical symptoms. I would love you to get into some of those other kind of body thermometer symptoms. I think you're very much in the majority of people who can't always speak through or articulate through what's going on.
No, I can't. And I'm still like that. And I know that that's when I have to step back as well, is going, okay, I can't even put words to this because I'm out of my window of tolerance for sure, my stress response. So some of the things people might notice about themselves, especially people who are very prideful on holding it all together all the time. And,
No one listening
we
to
can get
this.
to a point where we hardly say no and we just keep taking on more and more. There is our body is telling us with our sleep. We realize that it's getting really hard to relax. We can't relax. Our relaxing is, we thought we were going to sit on the couch and just read our book, but while we're reading, our thoughts are going in 10 different directions, or we lay ourselves down to sleep and we can't shut off our mind. The tension, the constant tension, like you said, your back tells you for sure. My chest tells me when I start to get tense, my shoulders, my jaw, my chest, I'm not like, okay, I've got to
The
stop for
jaw
a
pain,
second.
that's
The
such a good
jaw,
one.
absolutely the jaw. But we start to get stomach issues as well. I know I could start feeling off and not even know why, right? Because we have to realize that it often starts in the body. Our body's telling us these things. Anxiety tells us when we need to start paying attention. That's what it is. It's the kid in the classroom who's the little bully that is just saying, actually, I need support. But instead, they get sent to the principal's office all the time. Well, they're going to keep coming back bigger and louder until one teacher goes, oh, I see you,
Yeah.
right? Let's give you
Yeah.
those support that you need and give the
Yeah.
self-compassion. And I think that's what's missing a lot for a lot of us is we're not giving ourselves the compassion we need in order to stop and go, oh, so my stomach aches are actually my friend. They're telling me I need something. I just have to understand what do I need? Right.
Yeah.
And this is where it's a good starting point is like you said, oh, okay, now I need to investigate. This back pain is more, I've been to the doctor, nothing else could possibly be done for it. It's kind of like the stomach aches and seeing my naturopath and everything else. You have only so much. And then there's like, okay, now you got to do your own work too. You got to take some
Absolutely.
accountability and give yourself permission to start not having to be that perfectionist, say, and put up the boundaries, right? Start voicing your own needs because it's really hard to do when, especially being a mom, right? You're putting everybody else's needs instead of your own or ahead of your own. So it makes sense that we're going to be the last. Someone had called it, I think it was Terry Garr or someone like that who wrote a book about burnt toast. But what she was really saying, do you remember this? She's like,
No, no, I don't know this one.
the moms are always taking the burnt piece of toast because their needs are last. We
I've
take
heard
care
this
of,
story, yeah.
right? Everybody else is
See, I'm
cared
not eating
for
any burnt
first,
toast.
right? You get the burnt toast, you get the
Yeah,
ends or
yeah,
whatever's left.
yeah, yeah.
And that's why we burn out.
Today's episode is brought to you by none other than Advanced Women's Health. If you are interested in diving in deeper to your health, if you are finally ready to feel like yourself, and you are finally over hearing everything's normal, everything's fine, and you want a deeper dive into your healthcare, then we are here to help you. We are currently helping patients in British Columbia and Ontario, Canada. But don't worry, if you're in another province, still reach out, get added to the wait list as we expand coast to coast. We cannot wait to work with you. Check out the show notes for more information on how to get started. So let's talk a little bit. We mentioned this word a couple times. I think it's very misunderstood. You
Okay.
and I live in a world of loving everything subconscious. What is that?
The subconscious mind is basically where we hold all of our experiences of who we are when you think about it, all of our habits, our patterns, our beliefs, right? And a lot of them were formed when we were younger, especially that 0 to 7, where we're taking in, we don't even have a critical mind formed at that time. We're all subconscious from 0 to, I think, pretty much early years, where we're just absorbing, we're like sponges. So can you imagine? We're just taking all that in, and that makes us who we are, our belief systems, and it creates how we see the world as well. So when we take in all those emotions, those feelings, those habits, the beliefs, the experiences, and the stored memories, that is our subconscious mind. Our critical mind, which is our logical, analytical mind, really is only accounting for about 5% on a daily basis. And then usually what happens is when we sleep, that's when the critical mind kind of starts going, okay, what am I going to keep today and what am I going to throw out? And it often does that when we sleep. It likes a filtering system. But what it does, it tries to match what's already in our subconscious, whatever memories are always there, feelings, emotions, experiences, and it kind of matches those. So it would make sense that it's really hard to switch a pattern just by talking about it. We can get certain places for sure, but as a therapist, what got me into hypnotherapy is the fact that I can get to a certain place, and I'm a huge believer in things like ACT, which is acceptance and commitment therapy, where it's based a lot of our values and our belief systems. Very important. And I start there usually. But then it was getting to a point of, I need more. I need more for my clients. It's like some people were stuck. And there's a time for different types of therapy. And there's a time for a little bit of hypnosis and not. And it's back and forth. We need to get into the subconscious. We don't. Now we're using the conscious brain and vice versa. So obviously, especially having a tool like the hypnotherapy, it gives us a chance to be in that trance-like state so we can bypass that critical mind, that analytical mind that says why, that wants to continually control, so that sometimes we don't get a chance to do the deeper work.
Yeah.
And that's the part of us that we don't realize we're in a trance stage for many times of the day, if that even makes sense.
Absolutely.
We're doing it while we're doom scrolling. We're doing it while we're vegging out watching TV. Some of us, unfortunately, can do that while we're stuck in traffic. We can
Yeah.
just trance out, right? And go, oh my gosh, I better pay attention. We just zoned out for a bit, but we entered a trance-like state. And that's basically what we do. And we're taking in information at that point, whether we realize it or not. We have accessed a light trance to the subconscious. And there's different levels for sure, which hypnotherapy helps you get to a deeper level, but we're
Yeah.
actually open into that state many times during the day.
And I find that so important. So again, people have a lot of concepts about hypnotherapy, but I always say it's that state where you're not overthinking and you're open to receive different things, right? And you can process in a different way. For me, going for a long drive, I'm very careful what I'm listening to,
Yeah.
especially like there's fast highway here, 401, right? So when I'm driving that, I could be on it for 4 hours, sometimes getting where I'm getting. I've driven it 1,000 times. I'm very careful what I have on in the background because you're right. Like I'm not listening to that. I'm not focused on the road unless I get snapped out of it by a transport truck or something. I'm just in this very calm, very grounded driving state. If I'm listening to the news, for me, I'm very sensitive to I'm not safe. Like that's been a theme throughout my whole life. I can't listen to anything that would allow me to feel unsafe, or I can be dysregulated for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
Now, I am incredibly in tune with my body. I have very high standards for my nervous system. There's all these things. Most people wouldn't notice that subtlety, that they get in their car feeling great. They get out of their car feeling a lot more triggered. But I
Yeah.
think it's those types of examples and patterns that we need to be aware of because that's where the impact comes. You don't have to do anything different except put on something positive when you're driving, right? Like that's why
For
I always tell
sure.
myself I have to do nothing different in that moment to choose therapy and processing or to choose trigger.
Yeah.
And it's those powerful moments that can give you an example of, again, like what hypnotherapy can do, right? In terms of supporting the body.
Absolutely. And that example of what we're listening to makes a huge difference in our lives. And I think in my experience, people come in and, they're into the news, they need to stay on top of things, but yet their downtime is scrolling on their phone. Yet, okay, so what are you scrolling then? What are you looking at? Right? If I'm not going to try and change how you want to be, but can we at least realize that what we look at, what we listen to you affects how we feel? So it's how can you support yourself then, knowing even just that? Right? Like you said,
Absolutely.
if I'm going to be in the car for 3 hours and I know I feel grounded and regulated, and actually this drive can be a therapeutic experience, or it could be a stressed out experience based on, okay, am I listening to the news and all this stuff that's happening in the world? And you get to your destination and you're like, God, I'm burnt out already. And
Yeah.
my day hasn't even started, or whatever you have to be. So it really does make a difference on what you are allowing and not allowing to affect your nervous system, I should say, right?
Yeah.
Because we don't even realize that on a daily basis. And some stuff we don't have necessarily control over,
Yeah.
but there is always something we can control,
Absolutely.
and we don't realize that.
Exactly. Can you give an example of some of the patterns you see show up that people are surprised about? Because I think, again, I drink the Kool-Aid. Like I chug the Kool-Aid. I am all about the Kool-Aid. of that subconscious piece. I have a 3 and a 6-year-old. I try to be so intentional about what's going on for them. But
Okay.
so many people I find are still in this like, did what happened when I was 5 actually affect me? So can you give us an example of a pattern in those people that are dealing with that kind of high performance anxiety? They're lacking resilience, they're
Mm.
overwhelmed, about how those patterns are showing up throughout life. Because I would love to show people we're not talking necessarily, obviously, everyone has an individual experience, but about
Mhm.
the one moment when your parent looked at you this way, the one thing, yes, that you can hold on to that,
Yep.
but the patterns that you see show up for people.
Yeah. In my experience, it even came up recently with a client, for instance, is we were uncovering, in this case, an unhealthy pattern that they came in that they wanted to break. Like, okay, understood. It was breaking down where it actually came from and why this person was the way they were. And what was underneath a lot of that layers of the onion, for instance, was anxiety, high performing anxiety. Okay, so let's dig a little deeper on
Mhm.
that. Well, when we look at some of the patterns that came out from it, and we don't have to go to any specific experience. This person had a wonderful childhood, and I'm not trying to dig up your deepest traumas because that's not the point of this. The point of it is just a little bit of understanding of who you are. And in this case, we used hypnotherapy. We regressed to the point of, okay, when have you felt like this before? She couldn't get to that with talk therapy. It was like, well, I'm just, it's who I am. Okay. But what about who you are? Right. And it turned out like it could have been years of wanting to be seen. She was like the middle child, per se. And when she was really young, it was just like, the more she did, the more you get praise sometimes. There's nothing wrong with that. Yet she's equated this to more got me love, right? Not how the parents were at all. They loved her unconditionally. But we get this pattern in our brain. The more I do it, then, oh, it's like I'm worthy. And it just kept going. And now she's like, not only was burnout, right? But a continual anxiety of just who she was, always needing to do, not giving permission to rest. Well, okay, so we came in here to try and break a maladaptive habit, but yet what really it was, it's not necessarily about the habit, right? It's about understanding what led to that habit, what you actually really need, which was to regulate your nervous system when certain things come up to help you break the habit. So it was getting down to your belief system, which happened when she was very young, right? Doesn't mean it's true. It's just a belief, and beliefs can change. But it allowed us to go, okay, is that what you believe now about yourself? Do you really need to keep going and pushing to be of value? No, I actually don't. When you get to stop and look at yourself in a whole different way, just going, yeah, okay, I'm still doing all these wonderful things and I still have all these great goals. But now I'm doing it from a more empowered lens
Mhm.
versus, anxiety controls you, tells
Yeah.
you that you have to keep doing more and why, and you don't always know why.
It's a choice versus like compulsion almost.
Yeah, yeah. So some of the
Yeah.
old patterns that we're sitting with, but you don't even realize, they can come from childhood. And it's not one
Mhm.
experience. Her parents just didn't do one thing. I mean, that was just an example. I mean, there's many examples. I'm just saying, like, it's not that we came from horrible backgrounds. Some, yes, there is the big T trauma
Exactly.
for sure. And there's small T traumas that our nervous system, we're not even realizing that is being stored as well. But it's continually of looking at, we're putting it too on ourselves that we don't even realize through our world and
Yeah.
social, even, right?
Yeah. It's those patterns. I always say it can be, sure, it can be big T or little t trauma, but it can be patterns of reinforcement. It can be
Yeah.
just patterns of what you saw. So, again, I think personal examples are helpful for people to resonate. So, one of the things that I would always procrastinate at a certain point in projects. And I still actually kind of get into this. And I was really curious. I was like, it's not necessarily causing me a lot of anxiety, but I just don't like it. And I'm that
Okay.
type of person. And so one of the things that I realized is it wasn't all projects, it wasn't all tasks. And so when I got down into that subconscious, after a few sessions, it was like really deep. One of the patterns that showed up was you're too big. Like I was always the first person to
Mhm.
raise my hand. I saw my mom try to make her body smaller. I was reinforced for the size of my body, right? Like if I was bigger or smaller, I had a big personality. I have a small human with a big personality. And so God knows I can understand where my parents came from. But that was a huge pattern that showed up was in all areas, all shapes and forms, how big I was as a personality or body or whatever, bigness wasn't good. So when I was working on a project and people would say, oh, this is such a big opportunity, it's such a
Yeah.
big project, you're going to get like when that was the terminology, there were things that would move forward the business, myself, etc. I wouldn't do them. Because why would you chase a pattern that you have been negatively reinforced for in teeny tiny ways, in big ways, whatever that looks like? And I think it's a really good example because we're talking today about high performance anxiety, motivation, like driving towards things. I hear that. But sometimes the things that we avoid that we know would help us in some way, shape, or form are
Yeah.
also coming from patterns. And I think
Yeah.
this has been the most powerful thing for me because I now chase a pattern. You talk about doers, but I'm like, why do I do the same thing 3, 4 times? And
Yeah.
again, it allows me to get clarity. Now, I may change my behavior on that, I may not.
Yeah.
But at least in that moment, to go back to your comment about self compassion, you can sit in that moment and be like, hey, I know you're triggered because this feels big. Someone told you it was big. You know what I mean? It's going to give you visibility, whatever that is. And you can handle it. You're a grown ass adult, right? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? If you want this, you can handle it. And just like to take that moment of compassion for myself and where I'm coming from. And it can completely change my state and behavior. And I think that's another situation where people come to me and they're like, I do the same damn thing all the time. And
Yeah.
it's killing me. And I don't know why I'm doing it. That's another use case for this.
Oh, absolutely. So, what you're talking about is a core belief, right?
Yeah.
And often when people feel like they're too much, it is that procrastination. You'll hold yourself back and stay small just to avoid sometimes being too much. But there's also the people, like we said, have trouble resting. If I
Mhm.
stop, then I'll fall behind, right? So
Yeah.
they won't give themselves that. That's a big core belief. Needing to be perfect is another one. If I let go of control, that's a big thing, right? If I let go control, everything's gonna fall apart, right?
Yeah.
Not delegating, have to do it all. Whew, right? If I slow down, I'll feel like I'm avoiding. And so these are definitely things that if we know that this is about us, like you
Yeah.
said, okay, I see that part of me, and I can give that part of me some compassion and then challenge it a little bit too, right? Going,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, that's the old me. The new me knows
Yeah.
I can take a few minutes and things won't fall apart, or I can delegate. And what's the worst that's going to happen, right? Some things
Mhm.
might not get done. It's just that giving that emotional resilience. It doesn't mean you're not going to feel it, right? And it
Yeah.
means more so that, okay, I can handle things now. I feel more empowered. I know what I need when I need it
Mhm.
versus going until the end of the day feeling exhausted and not having time for anything except for just crashing, right? The energy's completely spent. And that's
And
what
I
we don't
think,
want.
yeah, exactly. And to go back to your body battery example, when we're in that situation, so if I'm procrastinating something, if I'm working against something, I don't know what it is.
Yep.
It's hard to have self compassion. Then I get more stressed because now I'm mad at myself and I'm telling myself stories about why I didn't do it. You spin out in that circle. Then you have another reminder later in the day of why you didn't do it. You're now at a 7, 8, 9, 10. As
Absolutely.
opposed to in that moment being like, okay, we're good. You know what I mean? This is where it's coming from. Let's hold some compassion. Let's put our feet on the floor. For me, if I'm really stuck in a loop, I go for a walk,
Yeah.
move it through. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then from there, I come back to it at a 1-2, I get it done and I move forward. And I think so many
Yeah.
people live in that pattern of just spiraling on their own stuff and they get so exhausted. By the end of the day, a doom scroll and a bucket of wine is feels like the only option.
Oh,
And
so true.
I wanted to make sure we had this conversation today because I'm an example of someone who runs multiple businesses. I have 2 children. I can live my life at a 3-4. And I don't think God knows, Sarah, 8 years ago, 10 years ago, would tell you were insane. That is absolutely impossible. But when we talk about increasing our capacity, I think this is what we're talking about. It's
Absolutely.
being able to clear some of that subconscious trash. Not trash, but I call it trash. But you know what I mean? Like the things that aren't serving me so
Yeah.
that I am not spinning from one trigger to another all day long. And I can deal with the actual triggers in my business and my life because I don't have time to deal with this.
Yeah. And I think, this is where we can feel that we have more control, is we are in charge of our triggers,
Mm-hmm.
right? That have come from past beliefs, and allow ourselves to let go. We can see them if that's the case. Doesn't mean everything's going to be like gone in a heartbeat, but we can see them and know what
Mm-hmm.
we need to help us move forward with them so we don't feel stuck. And because a lot of those are in the subconscious, I think that's where a lot of different tools can come into play. Hypnotherapy, brain spotting, somatic therapy, again, the body,
Mm-hmm.
and mindfulness. There's a lot of different tools we can use. It doesn't have to be just one. But like you said, you go for a walk, you clear your head, you use some self compassion for yourself. I think we don't do that enough. I think we go for a walk and we put on a podcast to
Mm-hmm.
clear our brain. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but there are moments when we actually just need quiet to get rid
Mm-hmm.
of some of the noise. There are times where I'm a big person just says, well, write out everything your thought
Yeah.
is telling you, and then close that book for a bit and just let it ruminate, let it relax in your body a bit without trying to fight it. Because the more we try and fight the feeling, it's going to get bigger. That's the kid in the classroom. It's going to get bigger. And instead, invite it in, see it, and give it some compassion. Okay, what are you trying to tell me? What do I need? And most of the
Mm-hmm.
time, we don't always know right away. So just allowing it versus fighting that feeling. We tend to not like the feeling, so we just want to push instead of
Yeah.
just getting curious with it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Okay, yeah, my chest is pounding a bit more. Okay, so what are some things in my control that I can do right now? Well, am I breathing from my chest or am I breathing from my belly? Because oftentimes people don't realize our chest breathing is survival mode and we are
Yeah.
feeding our brain to stay in that zone. So something as small as tending to the body. And it sounds so basic, but a good example, if you want to use a personal example, I drive to Kelowna a lot and
Mm-hmm.
I hated long drives over the Coquihalla. I had a real, almost like a panic attack when I would drive with the kids, especially when
Yeah.
they're little. I felt like I didn't have control. Do you know that feeling of like you're just going to drive off the edge? You don't trust
You
yourself. It's
actually
like
feel like that
standing.
sometimes for people who
Yeah.
have not driven that. You've got like a log truck in front of you, a log truck behind you, and a log truck passing you, and you're ripping around a corner, and you're like, I'm this is the end. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same when people stand on high balconies and they go near
Mhm.
the edge and like, I don't trust myself. I feel like I'm going to jump.
Yeah.
Those are
Yeah.
trauma responses, right? The feeling of your body doesn't trust you.
Yeah.
So, what that is, the more I learned to get out of my brain and into my body, which was
Mhm.
the breathing, the relaxing the shoulders, the softening the jaw, going back to the sense of safety, the
Mhm.
talk that I would use to myself. They sound so basic, but I can now drive that thing and I have to slow myself down. There's no more me putting on my four ways because I was the slowest person on there driving.
Yeah.
I now can just anytime I feel something that trigger, I can just relax into it. And a lot of
Mhm.
our anxiety is like that. We might not know always our trigger, but if we can soften through it and relax through it, we're helping ourselves then move
Mhm.
a little step forward and going, oh, I can use some self-compassion and curiosity until I can figure this out a bit more. So that's a
Absolutely.
body-based response, right? Just like you said,
Yeah.
you use your body thermometer, your body energy to tell you what you need to help you move forward. That's curiosity.
I love that. I love that. Well, I'm mindful you have a client right after this.
Thank you.
So I think we could talk forever. But for anyone who is curious, who is like, this is me, I need a different approach, we will have all of Connie's information in the show notes. You can book either a consultation to chat with her, see if it's a right fit, book right in a consultation. But on that note, is there any last words, last things you want people to hear as we head back into those body-based feelings going into the fall, as we are hitting that different routine, as we're struggling with that anxiety? Is there any last takeaways you want people to have?
Trust your body, I think, is a big one. Maybe is that your body's telling you something. Please pause and listen to it. I don't think we give ourselves enough permission to know that there's a way forward through this that doesn't have to feel as stressful as overwhelm. Overwhelm is telling you something. And it doesn't always mean that we can change the stressors, but we can change how we respond to stress so that we're not then triggering more anxiety.
I love that. I always say, like, collapsing time is my success strategy. How long you're triggered, how much you're triggered, like all those types of things. If you can just shrink every one of those moments, it becomes a moment, not a day. And I think that's really where you can move through life. And yeah, thank you so much for coming. I am
Thank
just
you,
so grateful to
Sarah.
have you on our team. You help so many beautiful women, so many of our patients. And I just cannot wait for people to get their hands on this info.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope that you had as much fun as we did. And if you loved today's episode, share it with a friend and leave us a review. That is how we spread this message, and that is how we are going to revolutionize healthcare in Canada for women. Have a beautiful day and be well.